Let's say Drake Maye fell in the draft as far as it would take for the Vikings to get a shot at him. Would this even be the right place for him? Let's talk about it on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that? 3, 1, 2, 3. You like it?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's crack-a-lackin', everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much to those of you who listen every single day. My hashtag everydayers. I love y'all so very much. I appreciate y'all so very much. Thanks for hanging out for another week of the Locked On Vikings podcast. If you're new here, hello. My name is Luke. It only gets weirder from here. You can find this show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, by the way, whether that is an audio listening place like SiriusXM or any other number of podcast apps. You can also find this show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today on the show, I'm going to keep going with the quarterbacks until I get bored, I guess. That's how Locked On Vikings works in the offseason. And right now I'm into the quarterbacks, and I think a lot of you are too. So let's talk about Drake Maye today. Drake Maye is probably going in the top 2 picks if he's not the number 1 overall pick in some kind of surprise where it's not Caleb Williams, although Caleb Williams is just like the overwhelmingly odds-on favorite to be the number 1 overall pick. But if it's not him, the next favorite would be Drake Maye, and he's, I think, the heavy favorite to be the 2nd overall pick. So he's a Commander, I guess. Everybody's kind of penciling in Drake Maye to the Commanders. So this is probably a moot conversation anyways, but it's only probably a moot conversation. There's no such thing as certainty when it comes to the draft. So I think it's still worth at least our time to decide how we would feel about Drake Maye in the event that, let's say, the Bears decide to stick with Justin Fields and they trade down and maybe they're going to take a wide receiver. They'll take Marvin Harrison Jr. or something like that. Maybe they trade down with New England. So New England goes up and gets Caleb Williams, and then Washington's like, I'll take Jaden Daniels, and the Bears take Marvin Harrison Jr., and suddenly the Vikings are trading up to 4 with Arizona. I think that world is definitely one worth preparing for. And what if that guy is Drake Maye, right? Let's talk about him. There's also, I think, a world where Drake Maye doesn't go as high as you think for reasons I'll kind of get into, but there's reasons not to like this guy. There's reasons to look at him and not think that he's like the anointed one that should be the next heir apparent to someone's franchise. And to give a sense of perspective, think about the draft holistically, right? The guy that goes 2nd overall isn't that good, a lot. It can happen. So I think there's a lot of reasons to take this seriously, even though odds are Drake Maye is not available when the Vikings are on the clock. I think to ignore him because of that would be an incomplete draft process, all right? Because I know I'm going to get a million comments on YouTube that are like, that's stupid. Why would you talk about Drake Maye? He's never going to come. Look at this idiot. So let me preempt that. But okay, so here's where I'm at on Drake Maye. If you read any scouting report, especially the ones from all the mainstream places that you'll find it on NFL.com or CBS or even places like Bleacher Report, you'll find a lot of the same refrains. You'll find stuff about how he's really good in the pocket and how it's interesting. You will find really mixed stuff about his accuracy. And I think that's a very interesting thing and kind of tells you a little bit about the person that is writing the scouting report as much as it tells you about Drake Maye, because Drake Maye's accuracy is really, really cool and also inconsistent. And that is one of these hard things to figure out as a quarterback. If you look at an accuracy statistic, PFF has it, and among the big 6 quarterbacks, which are Maye, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy. Those are the 6 that will say you can probably pencil into the top 50 picks, right? Some of those guys might be 2nd rounders, but probably in the top 50, most of them go, if not all. Of those 6, Drake Maye's accuracy percentage is the lowest per PFF's charting. Now, what that won't tell you, because they are just looking at every rep and saying, was it or was it not accurate? They won't tell you if he was throwing off of a good base or if he was throwing off platform. They won't tell you if he was throwing off the move. I don't think that that stat has a pressure adjustment in it. So you would have to do that part manually. There's just all kinds of like nuance and context that won't give you, which is really the key to understanding any quarterback, Drake Maye included. So when you look at his accuracy, I think it kind of makes sense that you would see some people say like great accuracy and some people would say too many misses. Like, how does that reconcile, right? And the way that it reconciles to me is that when he is on time and in rhythm, right? Which is a lot of the time. He can absolutely play on time and in rhythm, assuming the play is like there. 1-step drop, 3-step drop, deliver the ball on time to where it's supposed to be with a pre-snap read. And that's something you kind of have to understand. As I understand it with UNC, my understanding of that offense is that it's very pre-snap heavy. So it was a lot of get up to the line, determine where the safeties were, right? Is it one high? Is it two high? Middle field closed, middle field open. Are there any blitzers I have to worry about? Does this look like man? Does this look like zone? Maybe even use a motion to figure that out. Get information pre-snap, try to synthesize it, and then make a read. And it is pre-snap pick a side. So it's not pre-snap pick a guy. You're not locking on to your first read when you go, although I kind of think that does happen to him sometimes. But it's pre-snap, you say, okay, left side's my man beater, right side's my zone beater, for example, right? Or some of it is single high versus two high beater. But whatever it is, I picked the left side. I go to that concept and I read it out. And if the coverage is disguised, then you have to go back to the other side of the formation or to the other side of the progression. And that can be very difficult, right? And that presents all of its own challenges. But what that turns into a lot of the time with UNC, especially in the games where they're racking up 50 points, because, college defenses don't know how to disguise themselves as well as NFL defenses do. So it's different than what we're used to. But what that turns into is a lot of 1-step wide open guy, 3 steps wide open guy. And then the success or failure of those plays comes down to the tightness of execution. So how good is that drop back? How quick can you get back and get your feet going and deliver an accurate football? And it is remarkably consistent with Drake Maye. I think, to be honest, I know everybody gives him the Josh Allen comp because he's big and he has a chaos gene. I personally, I think that part of his game is the thing that will take him the furthest. Just being able to synthesize some level of information, and I want him to get better at post-snap processing. We'll talk about what I mean by that. But for me, at least, being able to synthesize pre-snap information and gather yourself, execute really consistent footwork, and deliver balls in the exact same place at the exact same time with the exact same velocity all the time makes your wide receiver's life so much easier. That just is such a godsend for a wide receiver because they can run their route the same exact way every single time and expect the ball to be there, and it will always be there. It is so much easier to build habits when everything is so consistent like that, and it really is with Drake Maye. It's not sexy. It's not the flashy stuff that you see, but that chaos ball crap is so much harder to pull off in the NFL. But quick rhythm game, you can do that all dang day long. We were just 2 months ago, we were mad at the Vikings defense for losing to that kind of thing against the Broncos, right? Check downs all day long, that kind of thing. Or these 10 play drives 14 play drives that the Vikings would give up sometimes that were all sort of gimmies, that were all, none of it was someone got beat on a route for a 15-yard chunk or anything like that. It was all just, okay, they schemed up 6 yards, they schemed up 6 yards, they schemed up 6 yards. Really difficult to execute that with consistency, which Brian Flores' defense was sort of predicated on challenging offenses to do that and assuming that they would fail. And sometimes they were really, really right about that. I would say if you challenged a Drake Maye offense to execute a ton of quick game all day long and get, gimme 6-7 yard chunks 14 times in a row and not mess up once, I would actually trust that for Drake Maye. If I would not approach him that way as a defensive coordinator, I would find a different challenge to throw at him. What that challenge is, again, I will get to because there are definitely answers to that question, but it's very Sunday football. It's very pro. And a lot of these quarterbacks, a lot of their best plays are very Saturday. And I think that is also true of Drake Maye. The big highlights, the things that get everybody super juiced up, it's very college. And I don't think that it's sustainable in a way that translates as well to the NFL. And why that, because like chaos ball is in the NFL. Look at Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and even Jordan Love is coming out as one of these guys now. Like look at those guys, right? They play chaos ball and chaos ball is there. But the way that Drake Maye does it, I think has some issues that just bear with me, because it gives me actually like a lot of pause for putting this guy in the upper echelon and in the same world that, we put Bryce Young and CJ Stroud in last year, in the same world that Trevor Lawrence was in. And it feels like that discourse is getting to that place, as it kind of does every year in draft week or in draft season. So we have a lot left to discuss. Thank you so much to the sponsor of today's episode, Nissan. If you are the kind of driver that likes to push things a little bit further, and perhaps you have a sense of adventure while also interested in luxury and space for your friends and family, why don't you check out a few of these Nissan options? For example, the 2024 Nissan Rogue is great for city drives and escapes out into the great wilderness. They have Google devices built in, so you don't have to connect your phone via Bluetooth and like struggle with that whole thing. It is all wired in. Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store, all into a 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure, or just to make your life a little easier every day. There's also the Nissan Armada, which will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. You can fit 8 people in this bad boy in luxury and style, but in a rugged 4x4 that can handle the elements. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Moving right along with this episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast, and thank you so much for making it your first listen of the day. When you are done here, if you're watching on YouTube, don't lift a finger. You will be taken to the 24, it sounds like against your will, you will be dragged into the world of Minnesota sports. 24/7 Minnesota sports coverage on the Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube channel. Just flick on that live stream, fire and forget, and have that on in the background while you work. Fill your brain with the glory that is the Minnesota Timberwolves, and also the Wild are playing. If you want more visuals on some of this stuff and a film breakdown, there is a free one over at patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. You do not need to sign up to watch it. You just need to click on it and watch it. I, of course, appreciate your support and when possible, but I do want that to be available to everybody. To do that, I do need some support from some people. So if you can, I really, really appreciate it, but hey, no pressure. So here's the deal with Drake Maye. And I also wrote an article that will go up at Wide Left this week about it, or next week probably about it. Drake Maye, I don't agree when you say that he is poised in the pocket. I think when you see, like, every scouting report will say something about how, like, he can throw from the pocket, he can play pocket quarterback. And I think they're talking about that pre-snap, back off, deliver a ball right at the top of your drop, maybe a hitch in there, maybe not, like nothing, not a lot of extra wasted movement, right? And I think, at least of the quarterbacks I have watched so far, best in the class. And the only two of the big six I haven't seen yet are J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix. But best in the class at that particular part of the game, that in-rhythm stuff, that just like timing-based, get that stuff down. Now, that is perfecto for Kevin O'Connell's offense. It's beautiful. But when I hear pocket presence, I'm thinking more about how you handle a pocket that isn't perfect. When you can just do a one-step drop and throw, you'll never be pressured in your life. The ball is out too quick. That's why that play is designed that way, because it essentially nullifies the defensive line. And especially if you're going up against some crazy monster on the D-line, it's a great way to like neutralize that threat. But you don't always get to live there, right? If they are running the coverages that beat your quick game, you're going to have to eventually do a 5-step drop and get someone, right? And find something. You're going to have to do play action and find something. And that means that the bullets are going to start flying. And when I talk about the pocket, a word about my pocket philosophy, and people get really mad at me when I apply this to Kirk Cousins. So let me lay it out. I believe that it is best to preserve the pocket rather than bail on it. I fully understand you don't always have that option, right? There's an unblocked dude. You just have to run away and try to find space, right? But when possible, it is best to not break the pocket. Evade, find a new launch point, continue in the progression, right? And hope that the timing hasn't been messed up too bad. I think that is best. And to Kirk Cousins' credit, he's gotten better at that over the last couple of years. But that's sort of the standard that I'm holding it up to is when if you bail on a pocket and I see that you didn't really have to, you could have rescued it, you could have done something else. For me, that marks down as a negative. And I can't say you're great at playing in the pocket if you don't want to play in the pocket. That's where Drake Maye is for me. Now, I might be overreacting to some of the stuff that's like earlier in his last season with UNC, where he was bailing all the time. And I didn't go and watch any of the 2022 tape. I don't think that would really help me at all because it's just a less polished version of him, right? It's that much further away from the version of him you're actually getting in the NFL. So I'm not too concerned with that. But early in the season, there was a lot of bailing, and this was very, very uncomfortable. Now, you have to give him a little bit of credit because he was getting used to a new offensive coordinator. Chip Lindsey, I think, is the guy who joined UNC just last year. So we're learning a new offense, we're learning new stuff. So being uncomfortable is a little bit more excusable, but it's still useful. Even if you understand why he's uncomfortable, it's useful to see how this guy works when he is uncomfortable. Because guess what? Every single defense is going to walk into the meeting room saying, we got to do, make the rookie uncomfortable, right? So if you're going to come in, he's going to start, week one, we did the thing where we let Kirk Cousins walk. We handled all of our roster needs in free agency, and we traded our entire draft to go up. That's the world where we have Drake Maye, right? This is not a guy that falls to 11. And yeah, we have that, and maybe we're thinking about a defensive end or Drake. No, if he's at 4, we're already feeling lucky, and we got to go, trade the world to get him. But if we did that, we probably saved a whole bunch of cap, and we probably used a whole bunch of it to get free agents to fill all our other roster needs. And we're going to bring Drake Maye in and try to nurture him. In that world, he has to start right away, right? And he's going to be learning a new offense right away. And that's going to be new. That's going to be uncomfortable. So what can we expect right off the bat? I feel like that's still a good allegory. And with Drake Maye, early in the season, it was flash of color, I'm gone. Like truly no comfort in the pocket or no desire to stay in the pocket at all and rescue the pocket at all. And when you watch the great pocket presence, pocket manipulators in the league today, I'm talking Josh Allen, I'm talking Joe Burrow, Tom Brady, the GOAT, phenomenal at it, right? One of the best things that he did was manipulate the pocket. You see short, controlled movements. They don't want to go outside of their tackles. You think about it, you're an offensive tackle and you're square and you're blocking the defensive end, you got him down, and then the quarterback runs to the outside of you and the defensive end just like disengages and runs away. All you could do is hold or give up a sack, and you're going, dude, I had the perfect angle for you. What are you doing? Right? You don't want to be that guy if you don't have to, and maybe there's somebody coming from the other side and you have to run and it's not your fault, but you don't want to make that the thing before it is the thing, right? Now, to be fair, as the season wore on, Drake Maye got a lot more comfortable. I still would not call him comfortable, but I would call him more comfortable in the pocket. He got less uncomfortable, maybe is a better way to phrase it, where instead of fully just feeling any flash of color, whether it was actually pressure or not, as soon as he saw, oh, that's the jersey of the wrong color, I gotta go, it started to be drifty. And you'll see him bounce on his toes a lot, and his feet will drift out of alignment. And sometimes he'll actually drift on those little bounces all the way out until he's ruined his tackle's angle, just like he was bailing. And there's nothing a tackle can do about that. Tackle probably gets a whole bunch of flack for giving up a sack or whatever, but that kind of thing is on Drake Maye. And whenever there is a modicum of post-snap processing, whenever he has to think about something that isn't his steps, he has to, his whole body just falls apart. All of his mechanics fall apart. His feet and his eyes are no longer in sync. Everything is totally a mess. That is a big concern to me. It's not so much of a concern that I'm going to say, that guy's going to be a bust or anything completely insane like that. I don't think anybody should say that with any amount of certainty, even if it is somebody like, say, Zach Wilson coming out. There are a lot of flags with Zach Wilson maybe not necessarily being great, but you need to be more humble about that in the draft. So don't take this to the bank and say that I'm like saying Drake Maye is going to be this total bust. But if he does, I would bet dollars to donuts that this is why. That he's a pre-snap reader. And when asked to process post-snap, let's say the defense took away the pre-snap read or the coverage was disguised and now the look is muddied and different, he's got to think about it. He has to look and reprocess, and that the wheels have to turn and they have to take time to turn. And while they are turning, he does not have the muscle memory habits to keep his feet right and to, evade pressure and have that instinct to want to reset your feet. Now he's going to throw off a bad base and throw off platform more. So when you talk about the accuracy numbers that I opened with on the show, he's throwing off platform a ton when he does not have to, because if you can make him process post-snap, you can make him throw off platform because his body is just going to totally go rogue on him. So if I'm a defensive coordinator, that is my plan. So how does that fit with the actual Vikings is the thing we have to do to kind of wrap this all back around. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. If you are looking to take your small business to the promised land, to go take that next step, or maybe you're just a hiring manager for something else, then you have to be posting on LinkedIn. I mean, they have over 1 billion professionals. Who does not have their resume somewhere on LinkedIn? But even with that huge number, LinkedIn can help you pare it down very quickly. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. And from there, you can spend your time, instead of trying to spend a bunch of time on outreach and spend a bunch of time on narrowing down, you can spend your time really looking at those candidates and determining if they are right for you. Hiring is an investment. We understand that. And if it's an investment, that means it's a risk. Those two words for a business kind of mean the same thing. And when you're taking as big of a risk, as big of an investment as hiring is, with the amount of training you have to do and the pay and all that stuff, the onboarding, you have to make sure that you're getting somebody who is worth that investment. And LinkedIn wants to make sure that you're set up to make that decision in a way that only you can. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is also brought to you by DoorDash, the clutchest app on my phone. Let me tell you what, because especially if it is a rainy, gloomy day and I don't feel like cooking a whole bunch, or a wintry day if you live in Minnesota proper and you don't feel like going out and you don't feel like cooking, hey, DoorDash is there for you. And it's a great way to get acquainted with some of the local mom and pop joints around your area that you never would have come across otherwise, because you just don't go down that street or whatever, but there's some hole in the wall taco place that delivers and is on the DoorDash app, and you can just click 2 buttons and have it delivered right to your door. It is fantastic and a great way to get to know your neighborhood just a little better. So go to the DoorDash app, and if you have not yet downloaded it, I got a deal for you. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. That's 50% off up to a $10 value just for spending $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change. Terms apply. So how does this all fit in with the Vikings? Here's 2 things that I think that Drake Maye needs. A timing-based offense that is not necessarily a scramble ramble kind of crazy offense. I don't think you do a lot of play action necessarily with Drake Maye. I mean, you can. Play action always helps. But I don't think he's a quarterback that needs it. I think you can have a shotgun, a lot of straight drops. But I want timing and I want things to develop quickly. So turning around and handing the ball off might not be best here. I want a spread, kind of like what they've been doing with Jared Goff a little bit in Detroit. I think would be a good fit for him. And for whatever it's worth, because we saw 4 different styles of quarterback this season, we also saw 4 different styles of offense. I mean, it was all a lot of the same concepts and reads. I mean, you only have what the team has practiced before, right? You can't just throw in a whole bunch of new concepts and say good luck. The receivers have practiced those routes all year and all that stuff. So you are a bit restricted just kind of what you installed in camp. But some of the different things that they did, they played with dropbacks, they played with shotgun and under center, and how many play fakes there were, or weren't in the formation and all that other stuff. Whatever levers Kevin O'Connell had access to in the middle of the season, he did pull, and he tried to make things that fit each quarterback's skill set. Now, like, I don't think the Jaren Hall plan worked at all, right? 7-step drops, play action. We just couldn't block for that against the Packers, and it was a catastrophe. But it's still at least informs you that Kevin O'Connell is not going to rigidly stick to just his own offense. He'll pull the levers that he can physically, like, can plausibly pull. You're not going to suddenly become air raid in the middle of the season, but you can change up some stuff, and he will change up some stuff. So whoever the quarterback is for 2024, he will tailor things to what that guy's skill set, whether it's Kirk Cousins or somebody else. So I feel totally fine with that. And I honestly feel totally fine with that. Will he be a fit for the Kevin O'Connell scheme? I feel kind of at least okay with the answer to that question for any quarterback, because I do think that O'Connell will just, like, tailor it to him. And that's one of the things that you should do as a coach. And I think O'Connell respects and understands that. That said, the McVay style drop back, 1, 2, 3, 4, or kind of 1, 2 on the left, 1, 2 on the right sort of reads that, like, Kirk Cousins did a lot of those reads where it was like a high-low on the left, a high-low on the right. And you would have to kind of go like 1, 2, 3, 4 for it and read through those pretty quickly. But a lot of it was delivering a ball in rhythm, right? And a lot of it had to do with timing and rhythm and stuff in a way that, like, Jaren Hall struggled with, Josh Dobbs struggled with, Nick Mullins struggled with less. His problem was different. So all of that, I think, bodes well for the possibility of Drake Maye as a Viking. The issue is with pressure, right? Because if I don't trust him to handle pressure in a way that doesn't break the play, I do not trust Drake Maye at all to rescue a pocket. I think if he sees a flash of color, it's a scramble drill now. And hey, he's pretty good at that, man. He can throw on the move like just about as well as anybody. He can throw off platform really, really, really well. And that's probably why he uses it as a crutch so much, because he's just never punished for it. The NFL is going to punish the heck out of him for it. That's going to be the rookie moment. Oh, baby. I would set my watch by at some point in Drake Maye's first season as a starter, that he will throw across his body or some off-platform idiot throw that gets intercepted, and you go back to the sideline and you go, yeah, I'm never doing that again, coach. Like, that is just, there's one way to learn that lesson, and it's the hard way. You can't go to Drake Maye and say, please stop throwing off platform, right? He's got to learn that one the hard way. That will happen, right? And that'll just, we'll chalk it up to rookie growing pains. But what I don't trust him to do at all is deal with circumstances that look different than what he thought pre-snap. That is the part of his brain that needs to be kind of built up from scratch. So I wouldn't be shocked if Drake Maye doesn't see the field a lot, and whoever drafts him has a bridge quarterback that actually plays the year out. If we do the thing where we sign Kirk Cousins to a 1-year deal, a bridge deal, and then we end up with Drake Maye somehow or some way, and he sits all year, I actually think that'd be really good for him. Where you got to get used to a thing where you have to actually have thoughts in the pocket and have your body do the right thing. You got to be able to do that in the NFL. For that to happen, you need good pass blockers. How do we feel about the Vikings pass blockers? Personally, my feelings are kind of mixed. I think we've got a couple of tackles that I feel really good about in Darisaw and O'Neal. The Vikings, in terms of pass blocking this year, had, like, arguably the best pass blocking line in the league. Like, if you want to go by metrics and pressures allowed and various, there's Ben Baldwin put out like an aggregate of like a week by week aggregation of like pass blocking stats. And the Vikings were firmly in the top 5 every single week. And I think they ended up on top. And that might be super jarring because nobody's O-line is good and ours was just the least bad. But for whatever it's worth, it's some of this like PFF grades and stuff that I don't really put a lot of stock into, but like for what it's worth, the Vikings pass blocking O-line was very good. And I think they struggled more in run blocking because they just weren't built for that anymore. But I think that's kind of what we all wanted for like years and years, right? Was to prioritize the pass over the run. It's kind of why everybody was mad at Zimmer down the stretch. So I don't know. I'm mixed on it because I don't know if I necessarily agree with how bullish those stats are on the pass blocking. Like, you still had a couple of bad moments from Ed Ingram, who got a lot better this year. You still had a couple of bad moments from Bradbury. You had, Cleveland and Reisner. They both had their moments, right? But like those moments were fewer and further between than we had kind of gotten used to seeing from guys like Dakota Dozier or Drew Samia. So do the Vikings have the O-line to set up Drake Maye for success? I'm going to go with like better than a coin flip for that. But we also don't have Dalton Reisner on the roster right now. We got to go get him back, and that's not a guarantee. So do we have that, right? We can't get Ezra Cleveland back. He's a Jaguar now. So what can we do at O-line? Do we want to make an effort to improve at center or at one of the guard spots or something like that? Like that could be a question for the offseason, and one I probably will eventually get to because I'll run out of other stuff to talk about. But I do think that the Vikings are really set up to nurture Drake Maye in the way that I think he needs. It's also not very likely that he's the guy, right? Which is why I'm talking about him in February instead of saving him for right when everybody's really into the draft. But I'm glad we got this conversation out of the way because you just never freaking know. You really just do not know at all. There are worlds where Mac Jones was supposed to go in the top 3 until like a month before the draft a couple years ago. He ended up going 15th. Like this stuff just happens. It's just not that easy to predict. What you may take nothing for granted when it comes to the draft. And I think if there is a world where Drake Maye can be a Viking, oh boy, that's a really, really good idea. But I also don't think that he's somebody that comes in day one and like CJ Stroud's this and has this awesome year. Not necessarily. And if he does, the first thing I'm going to look at is if he got better in the pocket. Because if he gets better at the pocket and at post-snap processing, boom, we're home. We're there. So if he's killing it, I'm looking at that first. And if he's killing it there, then all right, cool. All my concerns are absolved and I'm all in on the Drake Maye train. But that's the main concern that I have. And it'll be interesting to watch whatever kind of jersey he puts on in the NFL. It'll be interesting to watch his career develop. I will talk to y'all next weekend. Hope you guys enjoy your first weekend without NFL football on the weekends. Don't talk to me about the Pro Bowl. That does not count. I will see you all Monday. And as always, Skull.